Today we're going to look at limits. Now the first one is one that we can factor. Using difference of squares. Now you'll notice we have an x minus 5 and a 5 minus x. So this one here we're going to have to factor out a negative from one of them. In this case, I factored a negative out of x minus 5 so that they are both 5 minus x, so that I can now divide them out. At which point, we can now sub in the 5 to get our final answer. Our second one is the limit going as x goes to infinity. Now, typically with these, we divide each term by x squared. We can then simplify each of those fractions. Now as x goes to infinity, each of these fractions will go to 0, giving us 2 over negative 1 or negative 2 for our final answer. Now the third one is what we call a one-sided limit. As you can see, we have a negative exponent. This really stands for x going to 2 from the negative direction. Now if we were to just plug in this 2 negative for x, and we subtract the bottom, we get 0. Well, we know we can't divide by 0, but we use notation as such, so it's 0 from below. And this here would approach negative infinity because you have a positive divided by a negative. Now, when I do one-sided limits, I always like to do a check. And I choose an x value that is really close to 2 from the below or from the negative direction. So I'd use a number like x equals 1.99. And then we can plug this in to our equation, and this gives me negative 1,000. So the closer we get to 2 from below, the larger negative value we get. So negative infinity is correct. Now, this last example involves finding the derivative using the limit definition of derivatives. So we take the limit as delta x goes to 0 of 1 over x plus delta x minus 1 over x, all divided by delta x. We can start simplifying. In this case, we're going to need a common denominator, which in this case will be x plus delta x. We can then subtract the fractions in the numerator. Now we can start simplifying the fraction. Now I just rewrote it to show that we're dividing fractions, and when we're dividing fractions we can invert and multiply. At the same time, I'm also going to simplify because we have x minus x here. We can now divide out a delta x. At which point we can can now substitute 0 in for delta x. And we get our final derivative, -1 over x squared.